Thanks a lot for coming. And it's my great pleasure to really see so many people here. And I'm going to introduce our very first speaker of the symposium today, Professor Sebastian Zoellner, who is a professor of biostatistics. And he joined Michigan in 2005. And I had the pleasure of meeting him when he interviewed here. And he has since been a member of the department and the Center for Statistical Genetics, and has been really, help advance the legacy leading statistical genetics program here at Michigan. And his research focuses on statistical methods for gene mapping, rare variant, various aspects of population genetics. So without further ado, Sebastian, the stage is yours.
Okay, I'm assuming you can all hear me. Thank you, June, for this nice introduction. If you were hoping to hear anything about gene mapping or population genetics or anything, I have to disappoint you. That will be a talk for another day. First, I want to use this opportunity to welcome you all in the name of the organizing committee. This was an idea that started about a year ago, mostly between Beth Hauser and Mike and Mike E. I think, I hope we have put together an event here that honors the celebrant Mike Boehnke. As part of this event, I have been given the job to describe Mike's role in Michigan in 30 minutes. Somebody just pointed out that gives you less than a minute per year. So we'll do our best, and I do what every person does in that situation. I reached out to friends and asked for their help, and you will see statements by Mike's and my friends throughout this conversation. The first one I want to highlight here is Dave Burks. Dave has been working on the Genome Science Training Program with Mike since its inception. The first thing he said was, "Thank you for doing this task." And I fully interpret that as saying, "I'm grateful I don't have to do it." It is difficult to describe the impact of Mike's scientific work and personal commitment to human genetics. I'll do my best. So to just set a basic stage here, just so that we all know what we're talking about, here's a short timeline of Mike's time here. In this context, it's very interesting that the only action photos of Mike we could find quickly of him working with students were in black and white. So Mike joined the program, got his PhD in biomathematics in 1983, then shortly thereafter joined Michigan. He rose through the ranks quickly. In 1993, he became full professor and then founded the GSTP and the Center for Statistical Genetics. In 2006, he was well-deservedly elected to the National Academy of Medicine. And throughout this entire time, he has done amazing research work that we can profit from up to today. In fact, when one of our former chairs, Raghu, commented on that, he said, of course he's a genius, and been doing statistical genetics while the current big shots were all still in diapers. So we're scientists here, so let's add some evidence to the genius statement here. Here are some summary statistics for Mike's work, and as we all know, summary statistics are just projections onto a low-dimensional space, which means a lot of details here have to be missing, but nonetheless, the numbers are quite impressive. There are 450 peer-reviewed papers, over 180,000 citations, which makes Mike the 5th most cited scientist in total at the University of Michigan. He had over 8,000 co-authors across his papers, which of course reflects his role in building and maintaining a lot of major research teams and, I'm blanking on the word, sorry. Consortia, thank you. A number that's very interesting to anybody in leadership is, of course, he was also extremely well funded throughout that time. He had over $80 million in grant funding just as PI. So, as I said, I reached out to a lot of folks here, particular folks who were here before I joined Michigan. 3 of them were former chairs, and something really interesting happened here, right? When I asked them about their contribution to the department, none of these numbers came up. None of them seemed to be the biggest contributions to the department. Instead, what we heard was, Mike is the heartbeat of the department, shepherding its rise to one of the best in the world. Rod Little said that. Raghu said, I think Mike's major and most significant contribution is on student-related activities. And I think the crowd in here would agree with all of that. Mike has always been a great colleague who always put student first. That was Jack. So the rest of the talk is going to be primarily about Mike's activity in the department and with students. You're going to hear plenty about his research from all the other talks later, but my focus is going to be this. So, as we probably all know, Mike was the chair of the admissions committee for almost his entire tenure here, from 1984 to 2021. He likes to say, in the beginning, he was the admissions committee, but as time passed, of course, the committee and the number of applicants we got bigger and bigger. We done a back-of-the-envelope calculation and estimated that he roughly looked at 9,000 files over the course of this year. And if you know Mike, you know he's looked at all of them. Right? There's not a single one that he didn't at least give a cursory examination. At the same time, it was always his goal to make sure that the students would come to Michigan, would both enrich the department, but also benefit from the experience. And so that was always a primary goal of our committee. And as somebody who myself has been on the committee for almost 20 years, that was always very exciting to see the exciting of students. One of his great strengths here was that Mike loved reaching out to students. He was always excited to talk to new students that he could interact with, and particularly if you could give them good news, of course. You have been accepted is one of his favorite ways to talk to a new student. And this attitude that he wanted students to be successful defined our entire department's interaction with students and defined the culture in our department. In fact, some people have characterized him as the de facto graduate level chair for our department long before we had such a formal role. This statement, a highlight of this event was this particular time. So for those of you who don't know, I think most of you don't know how our admission process works. Typically, each file gets reviewed by 2 faculty on the committee plus the chair. But in the end, the entire department, the entire committee sits together and tries to decide which students we should admit, which students we should make offer to. That meeting is extremely important because it allows us to get to the students in time so that they actually want to come to Michigan. It also gives the students clarity about what options they have going forward. So having this in a timely manner is critical. About, I want to say 12 years ago, it though happened so that the time that we managed to get everybody in the committee in one room, there was a major blackout in the School of Public Health. Major. I mean, electricity was gone and would not come back. And those of you who have been in SPH know, especially in SPH 2, know the meeting rooms don't have windows, right? So no electricity means no light. So the rational choice here, of course, would have been to say, we have this meeting another time. But of course, the downstairs cost is students are going to learn later, we're going to learn later, our entire process will be not as efficient. So instead, it was Mike's choice with the rest of the department to pressure on. And we instead had a very productive meeting by candlelight up until like hours later, electricity came back and we could finish finally with actual light to do this meeting. When asking our chairs about the committee of Mike's, this is one of the statements that Raghu gave me. For any chair, Mike going on sabbatical is a nightmare, simply because how are we going to do admissions? He is simply irreplaceable. But of course, admitting students is only part of it. You also need to fund them. And here, one of Mike's major passions was always the Genome Science Training Program. He started that in 1995, and it has been continuously funded. It is now in its 32nd year. And those of you who have run training programs know that that is no mean feat. In the 6 renewals, it is typically scored among the top applications. In fact, when we got our last, I was involved in the last renewal, when we got the reviews for it, the total score was a 12 or 13, and we all joked that we were letting the ball drop and not doing as well as we used to. It was 11. Okay, sorry. Still, worse than the year before. The training program has trained 160 scientists, many of whom are here in the audience today and have gone on and do major things. An interesting aspect, I think a really nice connection to that is actually that the recently starting co-director, Jen Smith from epidemiology, has originally, around the time when I started here, been on the genome science training program, so is an alum of the training program who is now a co-director. And she describes working with Mike as somebody who really shows up for people, even when somebody else could do the job. And that has managed to give the training in our department a very important personal touch. Another aspect, as you probably also know from training grants, is training grants are only as good as the people we accept to them. And here there's, of course, some synergy between being the chair on the admissions committee and leading the training program. So Mike has always been very active in identifying potential candidates for the training program and reaching out to them. In fact, as Jeremy Taylor puts it, he would contact essentially all domestic applicants who looked even remotely possible and ask them to rewrite their personal statement to say that the GSDP was their lifelong wish. Okay, beyond that, beyond students, Mike also had a major impact on department culture. He, in faculty meetings, often set the tone. Particularly as a young faculty member, for me, faculty meetings were incredibly intimidating. So the typical MO that Mike had in them is he listened to everybody's side and then eventually spoke up and managed to both acknowledge every position in the room while at the same time pointing out a way forward that was, in many situations, the best way forward. But not only he did that, he also supported a lot of junior faculty. I think all of us have found it really easy to find him in his office and sit down with him and get advice. Often also resources from from him. And one thing that is remarkable, he would easily sit down with you, talk things through for half an hour, and then end the conversation with, well, and of course, this all is free advice. So you can absolutely be free to ignore it, which we rarely did. But nonetheless, that is very instructive. And another role he had in our department was much more passive, but I'm thinking just as important. Mike provided an outstanding example on how to combine family life with a very, very successful career, right? I think we all know Betsy, who has been Mike's better half for all these years. And it is always hard to imagine how to put everything together, and it was so great to see an example of people who worked in the same building, found time for lunch together. It is kind of funny that over most of Mike's career, the family only had one car because they only needed one car. They came to work together, they left work together, and I think that is a great example for anyone to follow, if you can. Nonetheless, and it's of course a nice bonus to all of this, that now their son Kevin is also faculty in our university. Another aspect of working with Mike is described here by Jack. Mike is probably the most efficient emailer I have ever known. When you send an email to Mike, you can be sure to get a response within minutes, regardless of the time of day or night. It is also quite difficult to get the last word. If you think you have ended the conversation, he will come back to you and thank you. And if you then thank him back, he will thank you again. Yeah, my wife, when she read that, said, yeah, I've given up on trying to out-nice Mike. And also in this context, it is very useful. Mike and I have started a lot of collaborations with other people together, and Mike quite frequently tells those people, Sebastian is good at a lot of things, he's not so good at emailing. And I'm absolutely agreeing, I'm not as good at emailing as Mike. I don't think anybody in this room is. Okay, another aspect, of course, of his work was building the genetics communities beyond our own department. Here, the Center for Statistical Genetics and the GSDP were both really useful. Particularly, the GSDP is a great vehicle for collaborative work. As you probably know, it accepts applications across the university, as long as you're interested in statistics and genetics. Right now, we have faculty from 12 departments who contribute, who are training faculty on the GSDP. And because every student that is funded through the GSDP has to have advisors, both from at least 2 departments, that automatically creates touch points across the university for faculty who are all interested in roughly the same thing to talk to each other and develop collaborations. It is a very ingenious design. Similarly, the Center for Statistical Genetics continued to help support students who were here, both with regular seminars that, honestly, for students sometimes were a little bit scary, but certainly allowed us to hone our skills, and also for resources, particularly the CSG cluster. Mike has also, through his entire time here, helped to recruit top talent to the university. Again, some of which we're going to hear later from. And more recently, he has taken over as leadership for precision health to make sure that the genetics resources, and precision health in this context mostly means the Michigan Genomics Initiative, that resources that we have in Michigan for genetics research are available and are continuing to allow us to thrive. To bring it back to Dave, Mike has always been on the upper 5% in explaining, synthesizing, and cheerleading for the field, and that remains a signal impact. I'm not sure it's a signal impact, but it certainly has been a major impact both in Michigan and in the rest of the world. Another aspect that I couldn't fit very clearly, but absolutely needed to be here, was Rod's statement that when he was interviewing for chair in 1993, Mike's kindness and infectious enthusiasm were important reason for enticing me away from the California sun. And I think we've all profited from his kindness and his infectious enthusiasm. I, in particularly, have profited from his kindness and, I guess, infectious enthusiasm. Mike and I have been very good friends, and in 2013, I asked him to be the godfather of my younger son, Raphael. Because I was on sabbatical at the time, the baptism was happening in Germany. Mike at the time, I think, was in Japan on a trip. Vietnam, sorry. That he managed to cut short to make it to Germany in time to attend the baptism. This may be one of the only pictures of Mike wearing a tie and a suit, so if only just for that, it has some historical importance here. But also, it was great, and he has been a great positive influence in my son's life ever since. So, I honestly have no idea how I did on time, but this is all I had. Well, I was a little bit fast, I'm sorry. All I can say is thank you, Mike. It's been amazing, and we will miss you.